Just a short video on a trick that I have with Christmas lights that are being fed on circuits that also have certain types of high intensity discharge fixtures on the same circuit in order to avoid damaging LED lights. Because especially non-power factor corrected high pressure sodium fixtures can kick back high potential pulses into the electricity supply due to the operation of the igniter in conjunction with the choke valves that they typically employ, especially at the lower power levels. You know, ones that use 55 or 52 volt arc potential lamps on 120 volt fixtures exclusively, which typically use choke ballasts. That can kill things like LEDs because they're delicate little fluffy bunnies electrically because of those spikes. And what I am doing, of course, in conjunction with power factor correction capacitors, because all of my high pressure sodium fixtures are power factor corrected to reduce line current, is I am using a string of incandescent lights at the start of the feed. So this is a string of incandescent mini lights, and then it goes in to feed these LEDs. And yes, it's actually supposed to do that. This is one of these twinkling light strings where every few LEDs in it has a integrated circuit built in to flash the LED. And that incandescent string acts as a resistive shunt because those high potential pulses are relatively low current, relatively speaking, and so the lamp resistance of the incandescence just acts as a shunt. You can see I have a few lights back here, and by a few I mean quite a few thousand. This is about an acre or so of lights back here, maybe a little bit more. These are more bushes where I'm doing the same trick. I've got these 300 light strings. These are those 300 light sets that Home Cheapo sells and has been selling for about a decade now. Actually, I think they first started selling them in 2014. Which use 100 milliampere lower current lamps than your typical incandescent mini lights that use 1/6 of an ampere, 160 milliampere, 170 milliampere, thereabouts. All in the ballpark of a sixth of an ampere. So it's 20 watts per 50 lights. These are 12 watts, which helps as far as power consumption because it is a 40% reduction in power consumption. But they do look more noticeably orange than 1/6 ampere or thereabouts lamps. And also because the filaments run cooler, the colored strings especially don't perform all that well. And so typically I only get these in the white. And in this case, because again the same circuit that's feeding this bunch of lights is running off of that high pressure sodium fixture way in the distance. I'm going to cut down on the spiking from the fixture. I'm using these to feed all these bushes, and then I've got a string of cool weight minis here. This bush I've also got strings of yellow, which are really hard to find. Typically you have to get them at Lowe's. Wally World sold them in the past, but I don't know if Home Cheapo ever has. Typically I have to get those at Lowe's. And then I've got these which look purple, but these are blue, green, and red, which is an interesting way to use these. We're using multiple single color strings in one bush instead of just the regular mixed string multicolor lights. It's something I've been doing not every single year, but most years that I've done a display, and this is the 20th year in a row I have done one of these displays. So I have a little bit of experience. And yeah, interesting effect that you don't see all that often. And of course here, more reds and blues, more reds, a bunch of cool whites in the distance. And way over there, that is a single string of 100 white incandescents over there running from the feed point, which is ordinarily feeding that 100 watt halide bucket, which I have disconnected partly to reduce line current, and actually it's mainly to reduce line current because that fixture is not power factor corrected. The HPS is, so that capacitor does help with the spike mitigation, and it also greatly reduces the line current to the fixture because it's about 106 capacitive VAR of reactive power, which is counteracting the inductive characteristics of the ballast. And then warm white LEDs, some greens over there, and then some multis over there on those trees. And that 70 watt bucket light over there is what's normally feeding all these. Or that 70 watt bucket is what is normally, the feed for that is instead going to these lights. Here, incandescent multicolor, not very many. This is just one little part of the display that uses these, but just for tradition purposes because of the appearance. Given that my first ever display in 2006, this was all I had. I mean, I did have some white and single color incandescent strings, but things have changed a lot in almost 20 years now, and again, this is what I could get, especially at the time being 16 years old with no budget. As opposed to almost 19 years later and having a budget, but the world's gone insane and there's a lot of other financial commitments keeping things going for the family. So yeah, and yes, those lights way in the distance, probably a good few hundred feet away. Those are also mine, because of course. And on one of my equipment sheds, that is one of those projector lights that Home Depot's been flogging this year. I of course bought that yesterday on Christmas Eve on 75% off clearance, because not paying 40 bucks for one of those things, no, but for less than 10, it's interesting, and it's actually not a bad effect, and if I find any more of those on clearance, I'll get them for next year. Not on camera, given the way the world's headed. And of course I have it displaying one of the projector things that says Merry Christmas, because one of the ones that it comes with uses the forbidden double H word. No, not the one concerning the Austrian painter. The other one, because they apparently don't like Christmas for very stupid reasons. Which, by the way, if me saying Merry Christmas offends you, I just want you to know that I don't give a shit. Merry Christmas. And even more lights over here. This bunch of bushes, which are mostly multicolor. These are, I think, the Home Depot budget brand. The white box ones. And these, there's one section of this string intermittently goes out, I think due to a bad electrical connection, so when I take all these down, it's going to be something to troubleshoot. Because, knock on wood, next year, because it'll be have been 20 years since I first did my first Christmas light show, I would like to break the 20,000 mark, because right now the best I've got is 17,283 in 2018. Right now I am at just over 11,000 lights, which, yes, I like my big Christmas light shows. And then off in the distance there, which you can sort of see from parallax effects, those are over 100 feet away. I got some cool whites, and then they go, again, way off in the distance there, running some incandescent, not incandescent, those are LED multicolors. And then here, these warm white incandescent LEDs they feed. And this cluster of bushes, those are those red and green alternating strings that Home Depot also has. Not alternating because it's a static effect, but it's just every other lamp is either red or green, which is decent effect, and naturally they sell out of those things quite quickly. Yeah, one of my tricks for when I do displays on this scale is every year after Christmas, buy up loads when stuff's on 75% or 90% off, but also at the start of each Christmas season, grab a bunch of, I grab at least a few of any interesting lights that I find, and then as prices, as they drop prices, especially given that the economy's taking a dump, things have been on clearance, before Christmas, which for guys like me that do big displays is useful. And of course, Mercury this year, extension cords frozen and piles of ice, which isn't fun, but also time. But I do have these cool white LED PR38s uplighting a couple of trees here. And again, quite a good effect. You wouldn't want the entire display to be like this, but it does look pretty good. And cool white LED isn't that bad for uplighting evergreens. Ideally, they'd make lamps which used a mixture of cool white, green, and blue. Maybe with a few yellow LEDs chucked in there, just so that it kind of emulated the spectrum of clear mercury. But they don't make those, even though it's something that with LEDs would be entirely possible to do, but stupid. And because I haven't used them in quite a while, I have one of these multifunction strings. Not really an effect I care for all that much, but it's interesting, and I haven't used any of these in years, so I figured I'd throw up a string. Yeah, that would be a problem if you had absolutely